Hi, welcome to Ecole Chocolat's Chocolate Masters Hangouts. We're so excited to be getting together and talking about chocolate. What could be better?
Hi, I'm Sarah Hartman. Welcome to our Chocolate Masters Hangouts. Today we bring together four of the pivotal members of the newly formed Hawaii Chocolate and Cacao Association. Our four panelists represent the scope of the Hawaii cacao industry. I would like to welcome Melanie from Sweet Paradise Chocolatier in Maui. Welcome. Dave Elliott from Moderator Chocolate in Oahu. Seneca from Lana Hana Estate Chocolate in Oahu.
Hey everybody.
And Derek Lanter from Waialua Estate Coffee and Cacao in Oahu.
Aloha.
Aloha. Our topic for discussion today is the rise of Hawaii-grown cacao. Sun, sand, surf, and chocolate. Sounds like a heavenly combination to me. And thank you all so much for getting up early to join in the conversation. So let's open with a fact. Cacao trees thrive in about 20 degrees north or south of the equator line. The southern tip of Hawaii is at 18 degrees 59 minutes north of the equator line, and the Kona airport is pretty much at 20 degrees north. So any farmer growing cacao in Hawaii, in the Hawaiian Islands, north of Kona is technically outside of the belt. Dave, you've lived and worked in the middle of the cacao growing belt in South America. How does Hawaii's position just outside the belt impact the farming techniques and processes used in the islands? And do they need to be different from what farmers are doing in other regions?
Yeah, Sarah. Well, you're right. Here in Hawaii, we are on what some people might call the North Pole of cacao. I mean, we're on the outer bounds of where the map dictates that cacao should be grown. However, if you've ever tasted any Hawaiian chocolate lately, you definitely know that despite those challenges, we can come up with a really beautiful and world-class chocolate and grow some beautiful cacao. So there's some differences, some challenges, some opportunities in the way things are grown in Latin America and in Hawaii. There's a couple growers here that are with us this morning, some really knowledgeable guys that I'm sure can share some other information on the topic, but I'll share what I've seen. I mean, one of the first things that stands out is the absence of disease here in Hawaii, which is a really big beneficial factor. Some of the things that have caused growers a lot of difficulties with cacao in other regions, things like witch's broom and Monelia, we don't have present here in the state because we are so isolated off here in the middle of the Pacific. And before I started Moderator Chocolate with my business partner Nat Bletter in 2010, I worked for the better part of a decade in Ecuador, a bit in Bolivia and Mexico as well. So I definitely saw some regions that were pretty heavily impacted by those diseases that we can really benefit from not having here. Some other factors, such as the winds here in Hawaii, can create a little more difficulty, much higher trade winds. Once again, these knowledgeable growers we have online can share their thoughts. I'd like to hear what they have to say about that as well. One of the things that that jumps out to me, the differences between Hawaii and Latin America for growing cacao, are the cultural differences. These are really ancient growing regions spreading through the rest of the Americas, from Mexico down through South America. Going back the Maya, the Aztec, the civilizations that created and innovated and discovered the chocolate making process and shared it with the world, and then even older growing regions stretching down to the heart of the Amazon. So they're areas where people have generation upon generation of knowledge passed down from father to son, and the planting techniques are also passed down. You see some really interesting things in terms of just the beautiful family orchards, heirloom varieties of cacao, wonderful things you see in terms of the ecology around the growing the cacao orchards in Latin America. So when we move now to Hawaii, what we see are some challenges immediately, right? This is an area where nobody learned how to grow cacao or how to ferment cacao from their grandpa or from their father. So that certainly can be a a challenge and a limiting factor. However, it's also a huge and tremendous opportunity because here in Hawaii we have some real advantages in terms of our first-class research institutions, in terms of the access to knowledge and information we have, and most of all, the human resources. I mean, just looking around, I see some really bright individuals gathered around here on this call this morning, and I think that's the biggest asset we have here in Hawaii, is that we're forging a cacao and chocolate culture from the ground up. And we're doing it with this, we're an island culture. It's a tight community. Everybody knows each other. Everybody works together and shares ideas. And I think what's most exciting here in Hawaii is that we have this this bubbling cauldron of innovation. And sure, we're starting from zero, or we started from zero. But we're going to get moving pretty fast because of all the thought and all the learning and all of the excitement and creativity we're putting into it. There's no place in the world that really brings together, as well as Hawaii, the cacao grower, the chocolate maker, and the final chocophile or chocolate enjoyer, I like to think of more than consumers, in one place, the way that's happened here in Hawaii. So we've got a tremendous future for those reasons.
So how about we talk about your chocolate? Today we're going to taste your coconut milk and caramelized ginger, right? 55% dark vegan milk chocolate. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
I can definitely talk to you about our chocolate. I love to talk chocolate. It's early in the morning, but it's about time for our first piece of chocolate, I think. So I hope everybody can see this. We wanted to do something a little bit different when we got to this bar. I mean, we've been making a lot of single origin chocolates from around the world, and a whole line of single farm chocolates made with Hawaiian grown cacao that's treated in specialty lots from individual farms. But here at Moderator, one of the things we really like to do is to try to weave a really rich connection between the origin of the cacao and the person who enjoys that chocolate. Not just doing so ethically, but also in terms of really imbuing the chocolate with a deep sense of place and identity. So this little chocolate bar here, this coconut milk and ginger, started for us when we started thinking about all of the amazing plants that the Polynesians brought to Hawaii when they settled here. So they're what we call canoe plants here in Hawaii. They're these plants that were the most important to their culture that they brought over on the canoes with them. It sustained them during that long voyage from Tahiti to the Hawaiian Islands. And one of the most important was coconut, or niu. So is it okay if I crack into this? Do you guys mind watching me eat and as I describe a little bit the tasting of this chocolate? I don't think I have any objections from the chocolate makers and chocolate eaters here.
I want some.
I know. I was hoping I was going to get. I would keep waiting for samples from everybody. I thought we were just going to have a big chow down on everybody's chocolate here. But I guess if we all ate chocolate at the same time, there wouldn't be anybody left to talk. And that might, as fun as that would be for us, maybe it wouldn't be as enjoyable for those listening. So what we do is we make a vegan milk chocolate. All of our chocolate's vegan. It has about the same amount of sugar as a 70% dark chocolate, but we replace so about 25% of the cacao, about 15% of the cacao with toasted coconut. And it just gives this lovely effect for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's the texture. The coconut oil softens the chocolate, so it has this lovely silky melt on your tongue. And then what I love most is the finish, the aromatics, the coconut aromatics, and we make this with a Big Island grown Hawaiian cacao. It has some really nice fruit notes, cherry and berry notes that linger and mingle with the coconut aromatics on your tongue as it finishes. And then just to spice it up, there's some little candied chunks of ginger, so Hawaiian-grown organic ginger that stud the back of the bar and really just brighten it up. So the meld of those flavors as it finishes is my favorite.
Wow. It sounds really wonderful. Derek, let me get you guys involved in the conversation. Derek, as the president of the Hawaii Chocolate and Cacao Association, you're current on what is happening in the islands. First, can you tell us which islands are growing cacao?
Right now, all of the main Hawaiian islands are growing cacao to one extent or another. That includes Kauai, both in the Kalaheo area as well as up in Honolulu. On Oahu, we have several farms, including Waialua, Lonohana, Manawili, and the research being done in Waimanalo. Maui has a number of places that are getting very close to being ready to harvest. Melanie's farm, of course. There's places in Hana as well as up in Kaanapali.
Okay.
It is rumored on Molokai. I haven't actually got a lot of information there, but I do understand that they're going to be somebody's interested in putting in a fairly sizable plantation on Molokai.
Okay.
And then Big Island, all around the island, from Hamakua, Hilo, Puna, Ka'u, and Kona, as well as Hawi. So really, all throughout the state, we are seeing farms of different sizes, from quarter acre to 25 or 40 acres, actively growing cacao now.
Okay. And what is the main activity for the farmers in terms of, are they exporting their beans? Are they selling it mostly inside Hawaii? Are they sending it to mainland U.S.? And are most of these farmers also making chocolate from their beans?
It's really varied as far as what people are doing with the cacao that they're growing. You have everything from people with a few trees in their backyard that are happy to work on using cacao in their salads or trying to make chocolate themselves, to others who are growing for chocolate makers locally. Whether it's original Hawaiian chocolate or Madre or Manoa, or others on Kauai, those are the current buyers mostly for the cacao. Now there is some interest. Certainly, we've had interest from whether it's mainland chocolate makers or from Japanese chocolate makers, Korea. So as people have learned about Hawaiian chocolate and that we're growing, there's been an interest in purchasing that.
Okay.
But currently, the supply is so limited, and many of these farms are very new. There isn't a surplus for export. So I would say that by and large, everything that we're growing is being used locally.
Okay. And you just said that, sorry?
No, that wasn't me.
You just said that some of these farms are rather new. So can you tell us a little bit about these farmers who are going out and are interested in growing cacao? What do you think is their main motivation and incentive to go into this business?
Good question. You know, it's just such a diverse group of people that we have growing cacao and making chocolate. Really, we have farmers who have been farming different, tropical fruit crops or been in agriculture for most of their lives, who have moved into cacao maybe 20 years ago when the first kind of experiments, feasibility studies were being done. Today we have another group of people who have been professionals in other industries, who were successful there and decided they wanted to work in something different. They wanted to grow things, or they wanted to make chocolate. It sounded like a nice lifestyle. Live in Hawaii, grow, make some chocolate, and so they're all different sizes. Their reasons vary. Some are certainly trying to make a successful business operations, making chocolate, growing their brands. Others have other reasons for doing it, wanting to set up foundations to teach other people about growing and making chocolate. The reasons are varied.
Yeah. Well, Melanie and Seneca, you both started cacao farms from scratch. Can you tell us a little bit about your motivation and your incentive? Maybe about your farms?
I don't know, Melanie, you want to go first?
Sure. As you know, I'm a chocolatier, and I make a pretty wide variety of chocolates. And the motivation for me, besides just really being a person who my whole life has been connected with growing something and owning land, is to eventually have a sustainable product. We live on an island, and buying local, I know it's a buzzword everywhere, but for people on an island, it's really important that we try to be sustainable. So I'd like to, have my company integrate ground up all the way through the finished product, and it's going to take a little time, but the trees are growing and they're looking healthy, and the demand for chocolate just keeps growing, so it's really great. Seneca.
Well, I think for me that there's a whole raft of motivations, but I think maybe the most important one, or the one that's top of my mind right now anyway, is chocolate at large, that especially the mass market confectionery industry, which is the vast majority of chocolate consumption, cocoa consumption, suffers from really substantial issues in terms of transparency, traceability, ethical, good behavior. And so what I kind of am setting out to do, or what I set out to do several years ago, I guess, is to try and construct a little miniature system that satisfies my own kind of requirements in that department. It creates a transparent and totally vertically integrated system so that I can tell a true and transparent story to consumers, and hopefully get them products that are also really delicious at the end of the day, because that's important, obviously. So doing that from start to finish is, I think, really important. And there's also an educational component to it as well. I spent a lot of my time on the mainland doing kind of tastings and education events about chocolate and cacao, and it's really, really frustrating when you hit a wall at a certain stage and are reduced to nothing but photos and videos. And so being in California at that time, the wine country is just sitting there, and you start looking at that and look at why it works so well, why people have this deep and emotional connection with it, and it's because all of the bits and pieces are there for you to see, and in whatever way you choose to integrate yourself with it, if that opportunity is not there, you can't. So I think in Hawaii we have a really unique set of opportunities around that agritourism model, trying to connect people with the different stages of cacao and chocolate production in a way that's really, really unusual. I mean, most parts of the world, if you've done origin travel, which maybe a lot of folks watching have, you know that if the tourists are turning right, like you're turning left if you're going to go visit cacao. It's not, you're talking about typically the tropic humid lowlands. They're not places where the resorts are being built, And so we're in a very different and unusual environment here in Hawaii, and we have this big audience here on Oahu, a local audience, because we have this big city sitting on our island, and also we have millions of visitors a year that we have an opportunity to connect with, the whole chain of events that leads from growing this tropical tree fruit to manufacturing chocolate. And that set of opportunities for me is such a compelling and interesting one that that's what got me started farming. I mean, I've been around farming in my family for my whole life, but this is the first time that I've actively tried to be the farmer. So it is a big change, and unfortunately nobody in my family ever was an orchardist, so they got nothing. My dad comes to help. He puts in work on the farm, but
so I'm sure before you started your farm, you visited other farms to see what was working well and what was not. So what does a typical cacao farm in Hawaii look like, and what are the main beans, cacao types that are being grown?
That is a confusing. It's not. I wish I could give you a clearer answer. Like a lot of places in the world, we're not that different. We are predominantly seed planted, and if anybody knows anything about cacao propagation, you know that it's like apples. If you plant a seed from an individual pod, you're going to get a child, but each one of those seeds are more like cousins than siblings, because each one of the seeds in a cacao pod is an individual act of pollination. So you're talking about one mom, but potentially many other contributing genetic factors. So when you seed plant, you end up with an overly diverse collection of trees, and we're just at my farm, speaking just for myself, we're just at the very, very beginning of actually beginning to understand kind of who we've got on the farm, who does what. We know, generally speaking, what kind of families these trees come from. So we have variations of everything from upper Amazon forasteros to very very Criollo leaning kinds of trees. There's a pretty decent understanding, especially with the assistance of USDA and Beltsville. You can do leaf sample genetic testing and get the satellite information. So you can learn a lot about individuals. Mm-hmm. But the interesting challenge for cacao in Hawaii on that front is that because the crop hasn't been actively commercially cultivated, like Dave was saying, for generation after generation, we don't have the benefit of that kind of intergenerational span of knowledge to determine what trees work really well at what kinds of locations. U of H has an active trial right now that has clonal plantings at several different locations around the main Hawaiian Islands. But even those kinds of experimental pieces of data take years and years to come in and get verified, because we're talking about a plant that doesn't even bear for 3 or 4 years, and then you've got several years after that to determine, okay, who's really producing, who's really productive in this situation, what kind of flavor are we able to produce? It so great, you've got a very productive tree at this particular site, but is it good? Does it taste good? Is it worth planting? So we have to optimize here in Hawaii for the best trees and the best cacao we can possibly create, because our costs of doing business are substantially higher than other places in the cocoa growing world. Everything from labor, very importantly, to power, water. On all those fronts, we have substantial economic challenges. So we have to be focused on trying to drive the value along the entire chain, which is why I think ultimately vertically integrating the whole process is critical, because the more you can capture the value add all the way from the end, the better you'll be set up to actually be able to be successful. Right now, with the costs of cocoa on the commodity market, there's, if somebody came to me and said, I want to grow a bunch of Hawaiian cacao and I'm just going to sell it at the world commodity price, I'd say, like, just go home, don't, or just burn that money.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not economically feasible. But I think that may change, and I think there are also kind of other parameters about what we do that will allow it to be more malleable in the future and allow it to be more successful.
So since we were talking about trees and flavors and what's working and the future of the beans, let's taste your chocolate. So we're going to taste the Lana Hana chocolate bar. Can you tell us about this chocolate?
Yeah, so this is the first estate dark chocolate that we've produced. Our orchard is very young. I mean, even the 8 acres that is in its bearing years is only 4 years old. So it's a very, very young orchard, and we have another 6 that's even younger than that. It's only between 1 and 2, depending on where you are. So we're just at the very beginning of this arc of productivity in the orchard, but we brought enough fruit and fermented fairly successfully last year to begin producing chocolate. And so the bar that I've got with me is called the LA, which just means black in Hawaiian. And it's a 73% just Maui sugar and nibs from the farm. So it's a very simple chocolate, but it's got some intriguing stuff going on already. I think it's far from where I want to see it go, but it's on the road, and it's kind of getting started in a way that I think is pretty intriguing. It's got some nice kind of berry tones and really, really fatty beans we grew up here in Hawaii too, which is interesting from a technical point of view, because when you're making chocolate and you've got these very high, I mean, some of our cocoa beans are pushing up towards 60% fat, so you can make formulations, you can tweak formulations without having to add cocoa butter in ways that are pretty different than other origins, at least that I've worked with. Mm-hmm. So this is just a 73% 2-ingredient bar, and it's pretty good. Pretty good.
And you said your first batch was just completed, right?
Yeah, we're just working on our second thing. We're going to go for the first time to the Northwest Chocolate Festival this year and show some stuff there. So yeah, getting started.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
I'll stack them for you guys.
Yeah, congratulations, Seneca.
Pass it around.
I'm doing some to Dave right now. Reaching through the screen. All right, Dave, you got it? You got it?
There we go.
All right.
Virtual chocolate. I'm going to close my eyes and imagine with you, Seneca.
So, Melanie, you've also been working on building your farm from ground up for a couple of years now. How has your journey unfolded, and maybe can you share with us some successful and some challenges that you've been faced with, stories?
Yeah, I think like every island, we face a lot of challenges in cultivating cacao. It's not just a matter of, being the North Pole, but also we have insects such as rose beetles that are quite voracious with young plants. So a lot of our young trees are started in cages to protect them for the first year. And that is, adds to the cost of growing, and also just the if you're putting in any kind of acreage, it takes time to assemble things like drip irrigation and protective cages. It's quite an expensive venture here. So like Seneca pointed out, the value-added aspect of cacao is really our saving grace here. There is a huge amount of interest in agritourism, and we're looking at that as well. Every day I get phone calls of people wanting a tour or a tasting, and it's really exciting. I think each one of us perceives ourselves as the Napa Valley of chocolate, and that Napa Valley is not very old in its formation, and if you look at their history, we have all the things here that we need to do to create that for chocolate. So it's very exciting. But microclimates here are very different. If I drive 500 feet away, the climate could be rainier or drier. The soil types are very diverse here and have different nutrient requirements. So it's rewarding to meet some of those challenges and figure out what works. We're fortunate to have a great agriculture department that has studied all the different soils and pests and things that we're trying to deal with. But one of the things about Hawaii, it's a very closed environment. When we talk about the varieties of cacao that we can grow, we do have a lot of limitations. We cannot just import live material without the risk of introducing diseases that the rest of the world has. So we have to be very protective and conscientious for our young industry that we don't destroy it by bringing in foreign pests or diseases. And it's actually quite scary, because when something takes off, a lot of people are enthusiastic and really go with it. But if the knowledge isn't there, they really put everyone at risk. I think that's one of the goals of our association, is to kind of impart some of that knowledge in a quick way, so that people don't do something stupid inadvertently.
And protect the environment and protect the islands.
Yeah. I mean, it's happened again and again, and we're just not immune from that, and we need to really be conscious of it.
And you also have a successful chocolate shop in Maui, which is what you were talking about before.
Yes, I have several locations here now, and we sell a lot of confections, and it brings a lot of joy to people. It's really exciting to see their face light up when they come in the store. It's a very creative environment. And the first thing they all do is breathe in deeply, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is like heaven."
Yeah, it's heaven. So, are you using your own chocolate? I'm sorry. Are you going to be using?
Unfortunately, there's not enough Hawaiian chocolate to go around yet. So we do selectively use other Hawaiian chocolate in specialty line of products that we do, but we're still using more fine flavored chocolate from Latin American countries as the base of most of our products.
Okay. So how about we taste your bonbon today? We're going to be tasting the fruit of the cocoa.
This is fruit of the cocoa, and it is it's made with 70% chocolate from the Waialua estate on Oahu, and we've added cacao pulp to it. So cacao pulp, for those of you who can't have the luxury of tasting it, is really a beautiful tropical, citrusy, banana, lychee, pine, just all those wonderful tropical flavors mixed into this pulp. And whenever we get, because I'm in the chocolate business, people bring me things all the time. So, a bucket of pods will land on my doorstep, and it's not really large enough to ferment them, so we extract the pulp, we freeze it for later use, and we make ice pops and and confections. So this confection is made as a standard ganache with some cream and the fruit, the pulp of the cacao, and the dark chocolate. I'm going to eat it in front of all of you.
It looks delicious. It sounds
amazing. The Waialua Estate chocolate is very fruity, at least this vintage, and it just brings out all the other fruity tastes. So I really love it, and it's rich and dark. The fat content is quite high in these beans, so we back off and don't use a cream ratio that a lot of other people would normally use in a ganache. We have to back that off. So the pulp really is the predominant liquefier here in the emulsification, and it's just wonderful. I'm sorry I can't share it with you.
So Derek, we're also tasting that same chocolate that Melanie uses from Waialua Estate. Is that right?
That's right. Okay. Well, let's open a bar here. So here's what we have. There we go. These are the 3 bars that Waialua does. The dark 70%, a semi-sweet nib, and a milk chocolate. We're going to taste the 70%, which is really the one that that we started with. That was the original flagship, and gives the best essential character of what we're producing here. As Melanie said, it's a vintage concept. With agriculture and single estate, things will change year to year. Your environmental conditions, the rainfall, production varies, and so does taste. So like wine, one year to the next, there's going to be some variation. And this year we would be tasting would be the 2011 harvest. And okay, here's a nice piece of it. Let me show you the bar. Okay, and as we do. Okay, so the first part, the nice fragrance coming in, rich, sweet, dimensional. I mean, you know how we like to smell the chocolate and get the first impressions of it. And so the Waialua chocolate has great fragrances hinting at the good things to come. The chocolate is made in cooperation with Guittard Chocolate. This is kind of what set the bar for us in the beginning, was our production and growing fermentation techniques with Guittard's chocolate making skill and recipe. And they have really done beautiful work to bring out the essential characters of the fruity character of Hawaiian chocolate. So I'm going to taste this.
Share the wealth.
I'm waiting for Derek to go feet up, just kind of fall over backwards.
It's just like that scene in Ratatouille where the fireworks are going off, you know, symphonies. The flavor is just right there. A lot of people comment that it's almost sweet, but it's the fruit. It's this very intense, multiple fruit flavors. We have red berries, we have darker cherry hints going on, and under all of that is this smooth, rich, full cocoa base. So it's a well-balanced and multidimensional chocolate. And this is true, you know, not only for Waialua, but certainly for the chocolate in Hawaii. We're just bringing forth these wonderful flavors, and it varies by the estate and their mix of tree varieties. The orchard at Waialua is extremely varied because it was the first orchard that was done for a feasibility test back when, in the 1990s. And so our orchard consists of trees from all around the world, many different estates that were brought in. And the reason for all of that variety was to see which varieties would be suitable and take well in Hawaii. So therefore our orchard is very diverse and mixed, and that mix is what creates the really this balance and character of the chocolate. It would be hard to just go in there and pick certain trees and then replicate that elsewhere because of the variation. So so it's a special orchard, and I think Waialua chocolate is one of the we inspired a lot of other people to get into chocolate. What we were doing and the success and the reception of the chocolate has led a lot of people to get excited and get into it. So we've in some ways been the pioneer in the industry and have had you know, Moderator chocolate, Lana Hana chocolate, Melanie. I mean, we've all worked together and have succeeded in our own rights. But we were the ones who kind of stepped forward first and had the ability with Dole to do that because we had the acreage, because we had the orchard that was starting everything. We were kind of out there to step forward first and try to show what could be produced with Hawaiian cacao. So we're very happy with the product, and of course working with Guittard was one of the best decisions that we made because of their experience and understanding of chocolate.
Yeah. So on that note, I would love to hear from each one of you a snapshot of what do you see as the future of Hawaiian cacao and culture, or I'm sorry, and chocolate. Melanie, why don't we start with you?
If I was to describe it in a few words, I would say that it's always going to be very limited. It's going to be an experience that Hawaii uniquely can share with the rest of the United States and coveted on many levels.
Seneca?
Man, I'd like to think that there'd be a diversity of possibilities and points of entry for people to participate in the cocoa and the chocolate industry. I hope that we can get to a point, I mean, I don't want to overstate the comparison with the wine industry, but I think that there are so many points of contact, it's almost impossible not to. I would love to see a day when people could come to Hawaii or locals could take up cacao farming and have that be their thing and have a legitimate pathway to actually have an economically successful operation just doing that. Or, you know, I think that I would like to see us get to a point where there's a number of ways you can participate and that they all work. And it's not just you have to kind of commit to this sort of all or nothing approach, which is sort of where we are right now, which is a difficult point of entry. But I think ultimately, I mean, what Derek was saying keeps something for me, which is just that the one consistent thing that I always taste with Hawaiian cacao, even when it's, you know, even when it has lots of imperfections like my farm still does for sure, it's a very balanced flavor, and that balance is really unusual for an origin cocoa. I mean, what a lot of people prize about these particular origins, thinking Madagascar for sure, it's like these really bright notes that are really stand out. And I think that Hawaiian cacao, what it has consistently for an origin cacao is this broad palette and a really interesting range of possibilities that kind of coexist and balance with one another. And that's something I taste consistently around the islands, which is really, I think, is really intriguing and wonderful. So I think there's a lot of, I mean, the sky's the limit, man. We can do so much with this industry, from agritourism to international recognition that we're already getting for some of these products from Madre and from Waialua. And so I think that there's a tremendous set of opportunities for us here to extend the educational and agritourism opportunities and to create just beautiful products on the world stage that are all Hawaiian and share the aloha. So it's all there.
Dave?
Wow, well, these guys, you can see with all the ideas coming from Melanie and Seneca, I'm not sure they left a whole lot for me to say, but beautiful, compelling chocolate. I mean, look what each of us brought today, and each of them was beautiful and just well crafted with lots of love, lots of aloha, lots of care and passion for the chocolate. So in some ways, that's what I continue to see. I see that passion extending forward and growing, and just the key for me is the people and the innovation. So the good ideas, the creativity, the passion for craft and detail that I so much admire and respect and am inspired by from Derek and Melanie and Seneca, sharing that with each other and just having it lift up the whole the whole Hawaiian chocolate and cacao industry and carry it into the future. That's what I'm excited about.
And Derek?
Great. Well, you know, we're about 20 years old in this industry. Things really began about 20 years ago. And in the last 5 years, we've just seen such a really tremendous, what you would call a groundswell happening here, with creative people, with new experience, with experimentation, and again, producing chocolates that are getting recognized, you know, around the world. So with Hawaii bringing in so many visitors every year who are getting a chance to get exposed to this, bringing that information and the gifts back home for other people to share and experience, I would say that it's very positive going forward. I try to take a view of what would this look like in 100 years from where we are today. And where we are today is just such a, you know, this is baby steps. We're infantile in our industry. It is maybe 100 acres of producing cacao at this time. The idea that in 100 years that may be a couple of thousand acres statewide, and people having now a couple of generations of experience doing this, like our Hawaiian coffee industry, that bodes really well. Having a larger supply of fine flavored, premium, distinct origin chocolate. You know, I'm very positive about where we're going and how it's going to be in the next 100 years here. So exciting to be at this stage, at this time, with this group of people. We're doing some good work and we're having fun, and we love what we do.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I can't wait to taste all the chocolates and also see in a couple of years what's happening. So I want to close with a thank you to Melanie Boudard at Sweet Paradise Chocolatier, Dave Elliott from Madre Chocolate, Derek Lanter from Waialua State Coffee and Cacao, and Seneca Classen from Hana State Chocolate, for taking time out of your busy day and joining in on the conversation. I'm thinking there might be a bunch of people right now booking their tickets to Hawaii just to taste these amazing chocolates. I sure will be at some point. Thanks for watching, and check the date for our next Chocolate Masters Hangout on www.ecolechocolat.com. Aloha.
Aloha. Thanks, Sarah.
Aloha.